I actually said to myself, I have to surrender to this process, because if I don't, it's going to kill me, just the process and the stress of the whole thing. I've got to surrender and accept. And, you know, it's taken me a long time to come to terms with it. I guess, you know, moving on to another topic, you know, the mental health side of things, cancer is a mind game. And if there's a message I can get across in this story, it's talking about somebody who, you know, was in complete control of her life, that had to really take stock. And I almost feel like it's life that had been tapping me on the shoulder saying, time to change, time to change. And it took the massive shock to get me to change the way that I live my life. The follow-up with the haematologist after the first treatment, when I had the terrible candida, I had to go and have a blood test. All it took, I was feeling so miserable and unhappy. I sobbed and cried the whole way through and was saying, I can't understand why this is happening to me. And then and there's a waiting room just outside with people waiting, listening to me carrying on. And then I had to, after they took the blood, I walked out and sat there quietly thinking, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. But that was really a sign of how upset I was and just not coping at all. And it wasn't until probably by the second treatment, and that I had been through it a couple of times and understood then what I was dealing with. And so I'm a person that I need to understand the big picture and then come into the detail. And if I don't have that, then I'm anxious and worried, because I can't deal with ambiguity in that way. I've got to say, I spent hours researching, looking at videos like these on YouTube, conference papers, reading research papers, anything I could get my hands on to understand what I was dealing with, because I found that the medical profession basically told me information on a need-to-know basis. So anyway, each appointment that I had with the haematologist, I had a notebook, and I just, like this size, carried it around with me, and every day I would write down the date and what symptoms I was experiencing on that day. And then I had another section for questions if I was doing research or questions that I just needed to know based on what was happening to me. And I'd take those into my appointment with the haematologist, and he, after a while, started laughing, and he said to me, do you have a medical background? And I said, no, I don't, but this is happening to my body and I need to understand. And I'm project managing this because this is my life, you know. And so he understood that. And but after a while, he would say, I'll send you to one of my nurses, and she can, the oncology nurses, she'll be able to explain a lot of these answers to the questions you've got. As I started getting more information and feeling I was on the, it's almost like a treadmill. You know, they get patients, they bring you in at the beginning, and away you go through the process, and then you sort of spat out at the end. So I was in the middle of that, and that I felt there was nothing more I could do. Everything that I could do was being done. And I got to say, when the treatment started and I was in that dreadful shared hospital ward, and I was saying to myself, surrender to the process and accept. What I made a deal with myself was, I would never have chosen this for myself, but I'm going to give this a red hot go. That's an Australian saying. I'm going to give it a red hot go, and means whatever I can do to make this a success, I'm going to do it. So I did find through the treatment of RCHOP, which was the 6 rounds every 3 weeks, that that time was a time when I became less anxious because I knew things were being treated, but I also had started meeting with my psychologist, and that started in February. So the treatment started on New Year's Eve, and I met with her over Zoom weekly initially for the first few, and then it went to fortnightly, and then 3 weekly, and then monthly. And that was a really great sounding board for me because I could talk to her about all sorts of things that I was concerned about, particularly when you're facing death. You know, I was thinking about what that meant to me, and thinking about what my priorities were now and how I wanted to live my life moving forward, because I knew that that person and the way that I was living was not serving me at all. And I think for decades, because of this need to be a high achiever, it was just in me. I pushed myself beyond my what most people would do, but I thought I could have it all. And so I wanted to have a beautiful home, live in a way where I would have lived if I had have been in a marriage, I guess. And so I'd move into, and a number of jobs I was in were non-traditional sectors for women. So constantly pushing myself, not getting enough sleep, trying to be everything to everyone, and be there for my kids. And, you know, so it was just burning the candle at both ends. And it's funny with society, women are applauded when they can do all of these things, but there's a personal toll. And I've realized now, all those years of pushing myself like that, exhausted me, and I think created an environment in my body where whatever happened, it was an environment for cancer to get a hold. And those behaviours of pushing myself and being full on active needed to change. And I needed to start looking after me as number one, not everybody else. And it was so interesting going through those sessions. And again, you don't hear a lot of this stuff. And I think it's just like going to see a chiropractor or a physiotherapist. But she got me to talk about my life and the dynamics of family and so on. And through that, I discovered why I was pushing myself so hard, because I was doing it. I'm the firstborn. There's a whole range of dynamics in my family, which meant that I really wanted to get recognition. And by doing these things where I was winning awards and doing all of these fabulous jobs where women normally didn't work and so on, that was filling my cup and feeding that need. And now I realise I'm the only person that needs to approve and, you know, give recognition to myself. The psychologist has helped me really think about how I respond to things. So I'm using, I guess it's being more wise, using wisdom, thinking about, rather than the patterns of reacting to situations with behaviours that I developed over the years. Now I'm thinking, is that my problem or theirs? And is that going to serve me by doing that? I'm even thinking about friendships and looking at some friendships where I think I had given a lot of energy to people to support them in issues. And now I realise I've got to have friendships where it's a two-way street. And while I do, you know, a lot of friends did step up and really support me, a couple of them didn't. And, you know, it's an interesting thing, and I don't feel any animosity because people cope with things in different ways. And some people, I've realised, if they hear the word cancer, they think, oh, that person, oh, my friend's going to die. I can't handle goodbyes and death. I may as well, you know, quietly disappear now because it's all too hard for me. And it's a shame that happens, but that's life, and we're all hardwired differently. But I've got to say, after the second round, I started having incredible neural numbness in my fingers and feet. And and I went to I went back before my third round of treatment, and I said to the hematologist what was going on, and I said, I'm really worried because I understand that this nerve damage can be permanent. Anyway, the drug that was causing that, I think, is called vincristine, and so they ceased that from that point on. So I didn't have that in my regime after that. But through that, I guess the dialogue and the conversation and better understanding what was going on calmed me down. And I felt at the time, because I had all of my network supporting me, even though I was alone a lot, I still felt incredibly wrapped around. That really helped as well. The treatment finished on the 14th of April. And so I've had no more treatment since that time, but it's been a rocky road after that time, because 6 weeks after the last CHOP treatment, you do a PET scan. And I've got to say, I had a CT scan midway through, and that was heartening because it showed that there'd been a 50% reduction in the lymphoma activity. So that was good. So at the end of the treatment, I was feeling absolutely wiped out and quite wretched, and looked absolutely awful. But when the PET scan was done at the end of May, I then had a follow-up appointment with my hematologist, and that was due to be on the 6th of June. And the day before, his office rang me up and said, oh, the professor wants to meet with you a week later. He's decided he wants to take your PET scan results to a multidisciplinary team meeting. And so I thought, why? What have the results shown? No one would tell me. So I then waited a week thinking, oh my God, what is going on? Why has he got to do this? And then the day before my allocated appointment, they rang and said, oh, the professor's got COVID, but he'll still meet with you over the phone tomorrow. So anyway, I woke up that morning with a really sore throat and feeling unwell myself. But I thought, well, that's good. When I got off the phone from him, I did another RAT test. Yes, it was positive. Went off and had the PCR, and it was confirmed I had COVID. So I'd found out on the day that my PET scan results, it looked like my treatment hadn't worked. I had to isolate for a week, and I was sick with COVID. And that was from a perspective of thinking, oh my God, I'm dying. I felt really lousy. That was pretty awful. And no one could come to see me because I had COVID. And I had all of that knowledge in my head of the treatment hasn't worked. I've just lost 6 months of a limited life. And, what am I going to do now? And I was ravaged by all of the chemotherapy and the rituximab. That does shocking things to you. The rest of it kills the cancer, but it does shocking things to your body. But anyway, so he said, we're going to have to do another surgical biopsy to try and understand what's going on. So in the July, with all of this going on in my head, I had the biopsy again. And then they did quite extensive laparoscopic incisions to get lots and lots of samples. And then I had to wait for the results of that. When I went to the doctor, I was expecting really bad news, and the professor said to me, "There's no sign of cancer, but it doesn't mean that there's no cancer in your body. It just means maybe they've only got the lymph nodes from your mesentery that weren't impacted, but they did see lots of scavenger cells, which I thought was unusual, and he did too, so late on. So anyway, he said, I want to have another PET scan. So in August, I had a PET scan again, so the second one, and then I had a third one in December. And by that stage, it had gone to the multidisciplinary team several times, and the results then, they now are saying to me, it appears you have no cancer in your body. We don't know what that inflammation is, but maybe it was there beforehand. It might be mesenteric inflammation. I think in terms of words of advice, this is an opportunity to take stock of your life and actually think about what do I want to keep in my life, and what things do I need to let go of? Because there's an imbalance of some sort, obviously, for this to have happened. And it's a real opportunity to be able to rethink the way you want to take your life into the future, and to see and realise a future for yourself that actually can be even better than what you've experienced. And sometimes experiences like this, you need to open your eyes to thinking and behaving in different ways, and really have faith and hope that things will turn out, because I'm a true believer that thought does create.